right, it says I'm streaming. We've got it on in the background, so we're going to see if that's actually true or not. Again, it looks like the microphone is being picky. I'm not really entirely sure why that is. Previously, the microphone's been fine, but this time it seems to be a little quiet, so I do apologize that you have to turn up your volume. I'm going to try to figure that out. It appears to be an issue only when live streaming, and I'll figure it out. So I apologize. Turn it on up. We'll get going from there. This is our live broadcast, so the goal is to do this. Again, I missed the deadline, so I'm working on it. But the goal is to do this at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Wednesday. So sorry I missed it. We're going to continue to use this live stream. This provides the ability for people to live chat while it's going on, so we can see what's going on and communicate with it. After the live chat, it does get taken down, and we show a recorded version, edited. So if there's things in there that long pauses or screw ups or I swear or something that might get us in trouble with the YouTube algorithm, we can take care of it. So because after all, we're all here for money one way or another, right? So not that I make a single penny off of YouTube, but it's nice to believe I would. So we're going to start with, these are in order, but I've got these articles that popped up on my newsfeed this week. We'll see NSA warns public networks are hacker hotbeds. First of all, the term hacker is, take it or leave it for what it is. You can call a script kiddie a hacker. There's all types of things that you can do that, but sometimes a hacker has to have physical access to the building. They have to have a USB stick, which is why in the olden days you would just say, go ahead and lock the door of your server room, and that would be enough. Now with remote work and connectivity over the internet, that's all changed a bit. So, but anyways, if you've ever had an Android or iPhone, you'll constantly see down here in Florida, who is it? Xfinity, Comcast, I think, is the provider, but Spectrum does this in the Midwest. They'll offer you free networks, and by default, a lot of the time, Android will just connect to it. Like, hey, here's a free network for you. There's no password on it. You want to get connected? Yeah, no data rates, right? And that's essentially what this article is referring to, especially since agency warns attackers targeting teleworkers to steal corporate data. Again, steal, it's dramatic, but essentially it is accurate. But the overall payload there is trying to get inside the network and hold him up for ransom, because it used to be 10 years ago somebody would try to just interrupt a company just to say go ahead and lock your stuff, but now they're trying to encrypt it, ransomware it, and do all that fun stuff. So now the payload has changed a bit for the hacking industry, and now there's finances involved. So for starters, the NSA gave a public service announcement, urged security teams to be mindful of the wireless threats employees face when using Wi-Fi networks. It also lumps Bluetooth technologies and near-field communication into the list of the worrisome protocols. So one of the problems that security will always face is usability, right? I preach usability is more important than what a program does any day of the week, right? If it's too confusing for somebody to right-click, or too confusing to merge a cell, or too confusing to do anything, people just won't do it. They'll find a way around it, or they'll give you an ugly report, or they'll use a different solution altogether, right? So the fact that Bluetooth technology and near field communication is on here, I would have a hard time trying to get somebody to turn off Apple Pay or Google Pay, because that uses NFC, right? Now, a lot of the times, this is why it's important, if you're large enough, to supply your employees with a mobile solution, right? Because then you could do MDA, or I think it's called MDA. I can't remember the name anymore. But you can determine what happens on the mobile devices, mobile device administration. You can determine what's locked down. You could turn off NFC, because why would somebody have their personal credit card or even a corporate credit card on a cell phone, right? Even with Google Pay or Apple Pay, those things should really be locked down. I'm sure executives want to be able to use that, but having a company policy that says you can't use those things is totally reasonable, right? Even if you're an executive, totally reasonable that you have to swipe the card instead of just holding up your thing and doing it, right? So while it is nice to have on a personal level, on the business level, right now, with the risks out there, just put a policy in place for your mobile devices if you have mobile device management, MDM, and if you don't, we can help you find. There's a lot of different solutions out there. Microsoft's is pretty good, and IBM's are pretty good as well. But anyways, continue on this article. Data sent over public Wi-Fi, especially open networks, which is the passwordless ones, does not require password access. Is vulnerable to theft and manipulation. Correct. So what a lot of hackers will do, let's say I've been going to the same Starbucks or the same coffee shop and they've had the same password forever, or they have no password. If I'm a hacker, I'll go buy my $60 device that remotes your connections through my server at home. I'll name it the exact same, put the exact same password in there because it's up to the client device, such as the phone or a laptop, and it's going to look at the SSID and it's going to say, it's the same I'm used to connecting to. Bam, I'm connecting to it. Right, so you can do trusted models. You could turn actually this feature off altogether on mobile devices and laptops. It really just depends on what line of business you're in, and as we're going to find out later in here, what your company is willing to put up with and spend for cybersecurity. Right, because unfortunately, a lot of companies don't think that they're going to be victims of cybersecurity. I can tell you for a fact that the companies that have had 100 employees or the companies that have had 5 employees, they all have a massive impact on income and cost and legality. So, of course, it's hard to sell fear these days because you see it plastered all over the place. It's on the news, it's in the papers, it's on the ads, it's in politics, it's everywhere, right? So do this or else. But that really is what cybersecurity is. It's preventing a catastrophe. And unfortunately, because you don't know until it's too late, most of the time reporting this could help solve this issue, but a lot of companies don't find the value in spending the money on or resources on cybersecurity until, of course, after they've been hit. I refer to the Equifax one all the time. After they were hit, they spent $1.4 billion upgrading their systems, paying for the right employees, paying for the right reporting tools, all that stuff that goes along with doing it right. That's with a B. That's not 1.4 million. That's billion. So it's just what you have to do when you're that big of a company, right? So the worrisome thing about, and the thing I wanted to point off in the security bulletin, the NSA should suggest disable NFC features when not needed, if possible, right? So NFC, one of the nice features about it is you can take your phone here and connect it to another phone, and it'll transfer data, right? So with the push of a button. But if you put your phone, let's say, on a table, and a hacker has put another device on the bottom side of that, they could essentially steal your data with you not knowing, or with you accidentally clicking, yeah, go ahead and accept. So, and that just takes like a piece of gum, if you want to be generic about it, something that's sticky that they could stick an NFC pad on the bottom of a table and you wouldn't know any better. It says, do not bring devices near other electronic devices. Again, how are you going to know this if it's hidden? But you can turn off the automatic communication. Do not use NFC, communicate passwords or sensitive data. How is the end user going to determine what NFC is communicating? If they're saying don't transfer spreadsheet, good luck, right? But essentially, you should be using a password manager. Anyways, we'll talk about a password manager that comes up here later on. But one thing I wanted to point out here, user behavior is the biggest cybersecurity challenge. By far, always has been, always will be. That's why every single employee needs to have proper training. But as I've always preached, a lot of employers don't want to spend the cost because they don't see the benefit. And they think that if an employee cares enough, they should go learn it on themselves, especially in the technical side of things. Oh, you're Microsoft certified? Well, if you want to become CCNA, you can pay for it yourself. Well, sir, we run all Cisco hardware. Why wouldn't the company want to do this, do that, and the other thing? We're doing fine. We've been all right. We have nothing to worry about. And then 5 years later down the road, they find out that those CCNA or CCNP engineers are $110,000, $120,000 just to hire somebody. And then they're going to come in because they want to make a dent. They're going to say, oh my gosh, this stuff is so old, or you have to renew it. And it's a constant life cycle that I see here in businesses everywhere that I've been. That's why I'm not a big fan of proprietary solutions, because it makes it very difficult for the sector to get off that proprietary solution. You get vendor locked. Vendor locked is your company is stuck with the solution because they're it's too expensive to get out, it's too confusing to get out, the migration is too difficult, or they're too dependent and they use something proprietary to that vendor that they're afraid that if they leave that vendor, they won't have the same options moving to a different vendor. So vendor lock is certainly real. There is one company that is very well known for it, but I won't say it. I might have slipped already and said it. So it says these tips are relevant. So the tips are the NSA's wireless warning, while basic, is still go unheeded to many, sadly, basically because of what I said. Sadly, the practical and basic advice still needs to be promoted. My fear is that the don'ts aren't ingrained. They aren't, because not everyone, people just want to work. They just want to do their job, right? They don't want to have to worry about, it's just an encryption network. What type of encryption does it use? Is this open? Is it WPA3? What is it? I don't know. You can't ask somebody to do that who doesn't speak that language, right? So they just want to be able to go. And unfortunately, to do that, you have to eliminate the easiest option for them if it's an insecure option. So get a mobile device management solution if you don't have one already, and turn off the option to connect to an open network on a company provided cell phone. Period. The end. And if you think, and you should have a policy in place, and talk to your HR department if you have one, or communicate with whoever you need to, the owner. You should not be using personal devices on your company's network. You should bring your own device, should be just disabled at this point, because if I take my home phone and I bring it into the network, and it has ransomware that I downloaded from the Play Store, because Play Store is so meh, that's going to destroy my network, and finding out the source of it is actually pretty hard to do. You might get a MAC address, but then trying to find each person's individual MAC address on the BYOD is kind of a pain. They have registration platforms where you can, for instance, on WatchGuard, you can sign in. Definitely have some, if you're going to bring your own device in, because you think there's a usability factor there, I would make sure that every single user has to sign in. It'll take the hardware device and the security certificate on it, and it'll register it with this, that, and the other thing, so you can track an incident if an incident happens. It's only a matter of time, in my personal opinion. And a lot of any mobile device management or any Wi-Fi solution should do that for you already. If not, you can always reach out to us, and we'll try to help the best we can. That being said, you can always find us on c14g.com. Our whole spiel is, you have to start from the edge and work yourself back in, right? So firewalls, Wi-Fi, access points, and reporting. You have to know that what you're putting in place actually stops things, right? So we believe we're a WatchGuard certified partner. They have solutions in all of those. We help configure and put out those solutions. It is pretty hands-off the way we configure it. You get automated reports. You can see everything that's happening to you. We do quarterly reviews with you to let you know what might be changing, how WatchGuard is changing with it, or whatever solution we put in place is changing with it, and how you're protected, and what needs to change in the future, right? So one of those biggest challenges with Wi-Fi, or with firewalls, is DPI, deep packet inspection. Deep packet inspection is the ability for your company to see inside the HTTPS traffic by doing a man-in-the-middle rewrite. You might hear it referred to as a man-in-the-middle attack. Obviously, some things you can't do man-in-the-middle attacks on Dropbox desktop client, as an example. So a lot of the times, the options are you can either disable it or you can put an exception in for whatever that line of business app is, right? So there are a lot of things that can be done. If you're not doing any of them, or if you're only doing a few things, then please let us take a look over your network, give you a recommendation, and hopefully get you moving in the right direction. So we're going to go to the next article, and this is something I always preach about, so this one kind of hit home. This is from ZDNet. Again, I like to share all these links, give credit to the writers, and the time to put the people that put the time in to document this and put it into a news article. The header of this is that the cybersecurity job crisis is getting worse. Absolutely is. And companies are making basic mistakes with hiring. And you'll hear me say this over and over again. I don't think companies want to pay for doing the job properly. Almost every place I've worked, they don't want to pay for doing the job properly because it gets expensive. right? So they go for the lowest possible cost and highest possible um, return of investment. And unfortunately, you're always going to have a gap, right? So cybersecurity works in, doesn't matter how strong your network is, it matters what the weakest point in your network is. And when I say network, I don't just mean physical networks. I mean your admin policy for your Active Directory. I mean your mobile device management policy, your file share policies, employee handbook. There's all types of things, which is why chief information security officers and HR are usually best friends. And if you don't have one because the size of your company is small, we can help you. But I mean, realistically, keep in mind that this is to help you. All these things that are put out there to help you from your company going under to getting stuck in legal fees. It's not, a lot of people have a tendency. I used to have a few veterinary clients of ours, and I was as a customer of the clients at the time. I thought, you're only trying to sell me this prescription food because it's a moneymaker for you. So I started feeding after my dog had surgery. I started feeding it normal food again. Lo and behold, a year and a half later, I'm right back into the vet paying thousands of dollars for the exact same thing I've already paid for. And the vet goes, "What food have you been feeding him? Didn't we put you on a prescription diet?" And I said, "Yeah, but I thought you were just doing that to make money as a revenue stream." And he goes, "No, dude, I'm here to help animals. Your $10 or $5 I might make off that bag really isn't going to make or break me." And now, of course, he made way more money off of me because surgeries are expensive. So that's true for cybersecurity as well. A lot of people think that we're just saying these things because we want to make money. No, we're trying to protect you from having an incident where you've got to spend hundreds of millions or billions of dollars or even $1 million. If you're a small company, you don't have $1 million. And a lot of the time, if you have a cybersecurity insurance policy, they'll typically drop you after that. I think what we're going to see in the industry is that cybersecurity insurance policies are going to start requiring certain ISO certifications or certain verifications, like do you have two-factor authentication set up? Do you have various security certificates that prove that you do this? Are you PCI compliant? Yada, yada, yada. So right now, I think insurance companies are kind of lax on that because they just like the money of low risk policies, right? But now they're becoming more high risk, so we're going to see how they do it. So, anyways, as I've said before, overworked cybersecurity employees are struggling to keep up with the challenges of the job. Yeah, the challenges of this job never end, right? So hackers or threat actors are always trying to find a way into the network. That will never stop. That's why you can never be 100% bulletproof. It's impossible. You just want to make it so difficult that they move on to the next one that's an easy target, right? So if you can get to the point where a worker has to be physically inside your building, connecting to a machine that is physically behind a locked door, that requires a fingerprint or a badge. I wouldn't do badges, but it's better than nothing. You're on the right track, right? That's ultimately where you want to get to. Anyways, a lack of business investments means cybersecurity teams are struggling to keep enterprise networks secure at a time when the rise in remote working has provided additional security challenges, and it's having an impact on their well-being. This is absolutely true. So with everyone working from home remotely, a lot of people want to get out of the house. Again, provide your employees, especially if they're remote workers, with a mobile device solution so they can turn on a hotspot and connect via that way instead of going to your local Starbucks and connecting to a public network or whatever place is available, Panera, whatever the case, right? So, and if you're at home, one of the nice things that you can do is you can put a watch guard. We do this. I've done this before. We set up a pre-configured device. We set it all up remotely. So if an employee is working remotely, they get a desktop unit. They plug it in somewhere in their house, and now they're connected. It has VPN connection back to the network. It has its own Wi-Fi broadcast, so your computer will connect or can connect to a Wi-Fi signal that goes straight back to the corporate network. If you use desktop phones, you can manage a phone. You can put a port in there that is VLAN tagged for that, and the handshake is all automatic. So all an end user, an employee has to do is plug this device into their internet at home, or if they have their own router already in place, they could just go off of a switch and go into this device, and then everything from there on out is connected through this secured device back to its home base. So this is all possible. Meraki is one solution that I've seen put in place. WatchGuard has a solution for this. I'm sure other competitors do as well. I think Sonic Walls is a bit too confusing, but that's me. I'm a Sonic Wall hater. But they make a good product too. They use real-time OS. It's terrific as far as that stuff goes. Yeah, so we're going to go back here. Combined with the challenge of additional workloads, so I'll read the whole thing. A global study of cybersecurity professionals in the Information System Security Association, ISSA, and industry analysis from Enterprise Strategy Group, ESG, warns that this lack of investment, combined with the challenge of additional workloads, is resulting in skill shortage that's leading to unified jobs and high burnout among information security staff. What is information security staff? Is a network engineer security staff, or is it an infrastructure? How about the virtual switch manager if you use virtual switches on your hypervisors? Are they part of the security team? Most of the places they're not, right? So if you do have a security team, is your security team the final approver in the change management process to allow or disallow a certain change? Do the people making those decisions on the security team understand the impact, or are they just literally relying on the change management process control to say yes or no, right? It's hard. A lot of security teams are afraid to say no because then you get an argument between the engineers and the security team and the C-suite managers. They don't care. They just want it done, right? So that bind is actually pretty common in the workplace, but realistically, all managers should know that protecting the information, and it's not just the information of the company, it's employee information, it's litigation management, or prevention, I should say. There's a lot that goes into why cybersecurity is so important, right? Again, besides power, what's the most important thing your company needs to provide for its employees? Most of the time, it's the computer system, right? Well, a computer can be powered up all by itself, but without a network, nobody's talking to that computer, right? So if you have a server and you think that the hypervisor is number 2 on that list, it's going to be networking before hypervisor, right? Because while the hypervisor is useful, if nobody can connect to it, it's not doing any good, besides burning power. According to the study, which surveyed over 500 cybersecurity professionals, 57% say a shortage of cybersecurity skills has impacted the organization that they work for, while just over 10% report it's a significant impact. I have a feeling those 10% might be victims of ransomware, and the 57% are saying, hey, if we don't put the right tools and the right things in place, we're going to get hit, right? It's almost 6 out of 10 people in that field that know better than the people that they're reporting to. But typically the people that they are reporting to don't want to hear it. They can't get the budget for it. I've worked at a few banks, and I can tell you that the management, just the bickering between managers, mid-level managers trying to move their way up, and that's a lot of what banking sectors are. It becomes such a nightmare trying to get anything approved. When I was at a certain bank, just to get signed in after my first day there, it took 3 weeks before I was able to actually get signed in. So that company spent 2.5 weeks or so just waiting for my approvals, right? So continuing, quote, the impact, especially this past year of the pandemic, has been significant. Teams are expected to do even more as a result of the businesses moving to remote operating model. Again, make life easy. Put a solution in where all the employee has to do is connect a device at home, and they can connect to the Wi-Fi network called My Company Remote, or whatever it's called, right? Whatever you call it, you can mimic that same model through these devices that are installed, and make it easy. Usability is much more important than anything else when it comes to IT. If your product or your solution isn't usable, and what I mean by usable is that the average person bagging groceries can do it. No offense towards the grocery baggers. Average person, I don't know what you want to say, driving a car could do it, then perfect, you're in the right area. The risk landscape has shifted dramatically to a more exposed environment, and a, quote, cyber war is in the full swing with ransomware. With ransomware attacks becoming devastating to many businesses. Again, we see it in the news more. It just means that more people are realizing that there's a money value, that they're not afraid of the consequence, especially if there is no consequence. As I've said before, I've been to a few FBI talks, security discussions, and a lot of these ransomware providers are outside of the country. They're in places that don't have legal jurisdiction from the United States, so they're free to get away with almost anything they can. And that's the hardest part about it. Cybersecurity professionals are now challenged with keeping up with the latest and greatest threats. Again, you should have a tool that evolves with the threats. We believe in WatchGuard because it revolves around the threat and changes along with it. So go ahead and do that. Put a tool in place that makes life easier. You'd be surprised how much that saves. So hold on 1 second. All right, so continuing. Did I scroll down? Okay, sorry. One of the reasons many cybersecurity staff have struggled is because the sudden rise of remote working as a result of the global pandemic. 50% of respondents say that this has led to an increase in stress. Again, put the right tools in place, the stress level goes down. Greater prevalence of remote working has made some aspects of enterprise network security more difficult, and cybersecurity staff has needed to help employees, many of whom may not have worked from home before, stay safe. Again, make an employee handbook, put it on, give it to everyone that's going to work remotely. Have printed out instructions what you need to do. This port, you hook this port up to your home internet connection, and your Wi-Fi signal will be there automatically. If you want to hardwire it in for a phone, use this port, whatever that case may be. It should be the same for everybody. Don't use this shifted model, this moving model. Just make it a static answer that you can give to every employee, and it does get across what you need. It brings the stress level down. It makes security teams focus on moving forward instead of staying afloat. It's just the way to do it. More remote workers mean greater usage of cloud applications. Again, cloud applications, same thing. If you have this right tools deployed, the end user doesn't know any different. They connect to the Wi-Fi network that they see when they're at work, or they connect to it hardwired if that's what they want to do for the speed increase, and everything else is normal. The computer doesn't know any different. The tunnel is encrypted the entire way, so no man-in-the-middle attacks can happen, and you're good to go. Almost 4 in 10, 39%, so not quite but close, of cybersecurity professionals say that their organization is struggling to fill the cloud computing security roles. If you're using cloud computing, again, you should be having VPN connection back to them. This should be done by your network team. You don't want end users worrying about if it's cloud computing or if it's on-prem computing or the hybrid model. This is not something that normal people should ever have to worry about. Normal employees don't care about that stuff at all. So, meanwhile, 30% are finding it difficult to fill vacancies in application security, and there's a similar story when it comes to security analysts and investigation. Most of the time, companies don't have the right tools in place, and also application developers don't pay attention to the networking OSI model. They just want to verify they can reach the point they need to get to. If I have to do a handshake in between, a lot of the times they're going to try to avoid that. They want the infrastructure team to worry about that stuff. So trying to find the reason that this is difficult to find or fill vacancies is because application engineers are not security-based people. They're product-based people. They are making a solution via code. They don't want to worry about what it takes if it's encrypted or unencrypted. I can't tell you the amount of times I've heard developers from old to young complain that trying to do what they want is a pain in the butt because they don't have full access to everything, even though they want it. Well, yeah, that's not how security works. Sorry, suck it up. Big mistakes. The ISSA and ESG report found that many organizations are making basic mistakes in hiring and recruiting cybersecurity professionals. More than 3/4 said it was extremely or somewhat difficult to recruit and hire security professionals. Duh. But 38% said that their organization doesn't offer competitive compensation, right? So there's your 40%. If you're not offering compensation, you're not going to get qualified people. People work for money, right? And the more skill set you have, the more money you want. That's never going to change. But of course, businesses are always going to want to keep as much money as possible. That's also never going to change. That's the business, if you want the right people in place and you want the right solutions in place and you don't want to have to worry about losing it all in an instant, and it literally is that fast. You can lose your entire company that fast in cyber with cyber threat and ransomware. It's just the way of the world. While 29% said their HR department doesn't understand the skills needed for cybersecurity, and 25% said that the job posting at their organization tend to be unrealistic. Correct. So, as somebody that's on job boards, I probably I look over probably 20 or 30 a week, and most of the positions are asking for 2 or 3 different jobs in one, right? And the reason that they do that is they don't want to pay for 3 jobs. 2, that most of the time they're hoping that they get the best person, but unfortunately people in the industry are kind of wising up to it, right? So one example of this is they want somebody that's a network engineer, that's also a hypervisor engineer for Azure, somebody that's an Active Directory, again with Azure AD, or someone that's a vSwitch manager or a storage specialist. Your VMware people and storage people have those people can share tasks. Network engineers are pretty much just network engineers because so much rides on their liability to the company, right? So companies could try. They're going to continue to always search for 3 jobs for the price of 1. Unfortunately, I think you're going to find that happening less and less because people spend a lot of time and a lot of money getting these certifications, or are proud of what they put in place, right? Just like I started this company because I want to help small, medium business not have to worry about these issues, right? I'm going to tell you flat out, this is what the risk, this is the reward, this is the benefit, and this is the cost, right? You don't have to worry about all the minute details in between. And I'm going to give you reporting on everything. I'm going to let you know everything that was blocked. I'm going to let you know everything that's being done to keep your network safe. And I would bet that if we installed just put in a tool to listen to the traffic, or put in a tool to see if it would block traffic, I bet you I could find in a week over 1,000 attempts to break into your network. That's it. I mean, it happens all day, every day. It might be from this country or out of this country. That's just the easiest thing to go for. So DDoS attacks are everywhere, which is distributed denial of service. A distributed denial of service is almost impossible to stop because it's distributed, but a DOS, which is denial of service, as my voice cracks, is a little bit easier to stop. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, DDoS, which is the distributed part of that, is becoming a little bit more difficult to do. It used to be that you can spend $25 on a hacker forum, buy a DDoS tool, but now a lot of the ISPs are trying to help mitigate that risk. Doesn't mean it can't be done. It's just less now, right? So especially with load balancers in place and all that stuff. Part of the issue, the report says, is many boardrooms view security as a cost, cybersecurity as a cost, because it is a cost. Running a business costs money. And unfortunately, once they start making money, they don't want to spend any more money because they want more profit margin. Unfortunately, I don't run that way. I don't believe running a company is that way, but there are 2 ways to manage a company and its people: numbers and people first. Most companies run with numbers before people. Unfortunately, a lot of those companies don't realize that if you put people first, they give you better numbers. But that's just a management style, an ownership style. I don't see that changing anytime soon. But anyways, many boardrooms view cybersecurity as a cost, something that needs money spent on it, but doesn't help the bottom line of the business. Keeping the business running is the bottom line of any business. You want to be able to maintain running your business, right? You don't want to stay up late at night because you're afraid that somebody from accounting or somebody from marketing is going to click on a link that destroys your entire network because it's a 0-day virus. What do I mean by 0-day? If you don't know, a 0-day malware, virus, ransomware, whatever you want to call it, is something that is brand new, never seen before. So the solutions, typically antivirus solutions that rely on signature based, there is no signature that says this is ransomware. So if you click on it, your virus protection won't stop it. That's why it's better to have a cloud solution for advanced threat protection. So you can see there's 2 things you can do, right? On WatchGuard, you can turn on a feature that will run an unknown packet against a cloud-based Windows machine or fake machine, and we'll see the impact of it. And if it's okay, they'll allow it through. right? So there's downfall of that. You have to wait sometimes for that very first time. If there's no signature for it, somebody browsing a website that clicks on a link might have to wait 10 seconds. But ultimately, that impact is pretty small compared to the losing 2 weeks or a week of business with nobody operating, but you have to pay everybody, right? So, and insurance companies will pay the bare minimum. They typically don't pay for the payroll loss, but they'll pay for because a lot of companies can't justify that, or they don't know like a per hour, how much does your payroll cost per hour. So if you do have a cybersecurity insurance policy, please check to make sure what they cover and what they don't cover. There's a lot to infrastructure in a company, right? Besides all the hardware, you have the power requirements, you have the licensing requirements, you have the employer requirements. There's a lot that goes into it, right? So, and if you're not getting reports on this weekly or bi-weekly or whatever you wanna do, it's time to start demanding that. And if the report is very difficult to read, the solution isn't right for you, my opinion, my professional opinion. So here we go. Many boardrooms as a cost, something that money spent that doesn't help the bottom line of the business, especially when organizations think about finances in the short term. Yeah. So cybersecurity is a long-term play. You want to keep the company running. That's all cybersecurity ever wants to do, is keep the company up and operating. But it's hard to see the cost of return. That's why reporting is so important. So it's likely these boardrooms still see cybersecurity as a technology issue rather than a business issue, which is naive. Notice how I highlighted that one in red. When high-profile data breaches and ransomware attacks have demonstrated that if cybersecurity isn't managed correctly, it can have a huge consequence on the whole business, not just the IT and cybersecurity teams. Again, if you are a lending company and you get hit with ransomware, or you're a lending company and you lose a backup tape, or somebody steals your database, that's going to have a gigantic impact on you, because you have to notify legally every client you've had over the past 10 years via postage. You have to pay for that postage. You have to send a letter. Sometimes it's certified. You have to let them know what was stolen or what might have possibly been stolen, as I went through in my last video, which is now on the recorded side of things. Yeah, a lot of these companies, they give you vague, oh, between these 4 months, somebody was in our system and we know they had access to this stuff, but they won't tell you what they don't know because they don't know it, right? So reporting is important. Having the right tools in place, having the right solutions in place, all very important. And yes, they do cost money, but in the end, you should be able to sleep at night knowing that you're not going to put all your employees out on the street, or you're not going to lose your insurance, or you're not going to lose your financing. And in case you don't know, a lot of government contracts require you have ISO certification XYZ, and they have to prove that you're PCI compliant or SOX. If you fall into that, there's just a whole host of things that you have to do. So if you get to that point, if you get these certifications, it can bring in clients, right? So I get job reports that ask that if I have what type of security level I have, like super secret or top secret or whatever. I don't have any of those, right? But if I did have those, I could apply for those jobs. So again, if you get those certifications that show your company is operating with this, that, and the other thing, it will lead to government contracts or whatever else is out there. So cybersecurity is seen as a cost center to the business, something you have to do, but only to minimal degree. That's the problem, right? Let's do the least we have to do, period. I don't want to have to do too much. I just want the bare minimum. And if you do the bare minimum, because of the way cybersecurity works, the least protected point is going to be the one that does the most damage. That's unfortunately just the way it is. Businesses have a tendency to invest in things they see value in. Again, if you're C-suite, if you're not reporting, if you have a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, and they're not working with the board, or the board isn't aware of the risks associated with it, let the board know these things. I've been in a few board meetings. Most of the time, they don't know that the risks are there. They don't see what the impact is. And once I show what the risk is and what the consequence if they get caught, they'll usually put the funds aside for it and move forward. And again, now the board can sleep better. And if you're a public company, the shareholders can sleep better. And it's just a win-win situation. It's kind of like if you've ever worked on a car. I'm not saying you have or haven't. I'm not assuming one way or another. You could do things the cheap way, or you could do things the right way. When you do things the right way, you drive down the road thinking, I'm good to go. I don't have anything to worry about. But when you do things the cheap way, you're afraid to floor it. You're afraid to brake hard. You're afraid to take a hard corner. You're afraid the tires aren't good because you went with cheap ones. Whatever, right? So, sorry, I was looking at the stream here, seeing if it's still going correctly. Yep, looks like we're still clicking. 40 minutes here. Again, my goal is to get these into an hour. I'm apparently doing a bad job because I'm just going through too many things. So I'm going to try to shorten it up like I did last week. In the meantime, it is recommended that CISOs are communicating with the board in order to ensure that they're aware of the cybersecurity needs and the needs of cybersecurity, right? Just like I just said. You'd be surprised how well it manages to move forward. And while issues around available cybersecurity workforce might continue to be a problem for CISOs, they will. Most places don't even have a CISO. There are tools and technologies that can help ease the staff workload, helping to improve both the well-being and the organization's cyber defenses. Like I said, put the right tools in place. If your firewall only does firewall, it's not the right tool, right? I mean, a firewall originally, but 20 years ago, was supposed to prevent access from the outside to the inside in a port that didn't need to be accessed on, right? But now they've evolved to, you can do anything that comes in the internet can be checked for viruses. They can be checked for anybody sending an email from within the company doesn't send something out with unprotected social security numbers on there, or phone numbers, or date of birth, or whatever you set that protection up to be. We offer a solution that has this and many more DNS. So if you click on a link that is known to be bad, or an employee clicks on a link in an email that's known to be bad, it will block it, right? It'll save your network. Just a standard firewall won't do these things. The threat has evolved too much. And on top of that, what is your proxy policy? Is somebody allowed to search for naked nuns at work, right? So you should have content policies in place, content filtering policies. You should have DNS, secure DNS entries in place. You should have spam filtering in place. You should have a firewall in place. You should have geolocation services. If you're a company only located in whatever your state is here in Florida, am I working, or am I trying to work with companies from Thailand or Lithuania or Germany? No, I'm not. So I should block those, right? As my company expands, if I get to that point, terrific, I can worry about that. But lock those out. There's no reason that China or Taiwan or South Africa needs to be talking to my network. Those aren't my clients. I'm not trying to reach to them. So I should be doing geolocation services that says, if that's where the traffic's coming from, go ahead and block it. You can also do things like make sure that nobody inside your network, no employees, are using a VPN to get around your policies. You could turn off the VPN or turn on, I guess it's essentially content filtering, but make it so that if somebody tries to connect to a VPN from inside your network, not allowed. And they don't need to be, right? So why would somebody in your network department need to connect to Uruguay, right? There's no reason. And if they can find a good one, let them be blocked. Let them come up to you and ask for it. And do you have a report that shows when somebody did try doing that internally? Because we offer that as well. So again, we can be seen at C14G. If I can get the side of the shirt right this time. There it is right there. And we're going to go moving on to the next article. This one's a little shorter. I wanted to point this out because if you've been around for a while, you probably have a box of power cords, or dozens of power cords, dozens of boxes of power cords. Don't just throw those away. That copper shortage right here, why a looming copper shortage has a big consequence for the green economy. They're gonna start paying for all those power cords, right? I mean, you're gonna have to strip off the sheathing, but your company could make a pretty big penny compared to just throwing them away and let them rot in a landfill. So keep those power cords, pay somebody $10 an hour or $15 an hour or whatever, just to cut those up, do some weekend work, be done with it. Go recycle them. There's going to be a lot of money in that shortly, and that goes for Ethernet cables too. Obviously, there's more copper in power cables, but I wanted to point that out, that the price of copper is expected to shoot up. Copper is almost everywhere in IT. It's in switching, it's in servers, it's in computers, it's in you name it, power cords. So expect to see that have an impact on pricing, along with the shortage for chips as well. We're going to point this one out real quick here. If you think that only affects private businesses and it doesn't affect people, wrong. UC San Diego, health breach tied to a phishing attack. Again, phishing attack is an email. There are, oops, I didn't want to show everything. There are tools that are out there that will stop phishing attacks, or you can train your employees to spot a phishing attack. One of the most common ones, and let's see if I can get lucky enough to do this. We're going to do that. And we're going to, so one of the most common ones is, as an example, email, right? So if I could find the email I'm looking for, that'd be even better. No? Okay. Yeah, I have a box pop up here because I wanted to show a classic example, right? So I'm blocking out the header because it's written from my personal address. Doesn't need to be there. But if you hover over this, you'll see click on the bottom of it. I can only point to it, but on the bottom of this window, you'll see click to open. And if that URL doesn't match what the text says in the URL, don't ever click on it, right? But how do you test that your employees know any better? We typically work with KnowBe4. KnowBe4 is a great product. If you want to work with us to implement KnowBe4, you can run out campaigns to test your company. It's good to report back that, hey, 25% of our users only fell for this, 5%, 0%. You can give bonuses to people. If a whole department gets 0%, you can really, I mean, to an extent. Some of these, I've seen some that get so tricky that it's just not a real world experience. Again, spoofing or phishing emails are looking for the easiest targets, right? So this is the easiest thing you can do. Just hover over a link before you click on it. If the two don't match, don't click on it. I just wanted to point that out real quick. But email is certainly a risk factor. So going back, here we go. Employee email takeovers expose personal medical data of students, employees, and patients. So now we've lost HIPAA compliance. What else in there? What is the consequence of losing HIPAA compliance? Your insurance rates probably go up as a hospital. You might lose a certification that shows you're trustworthy. There's data stolen. So if there's data stolen, you might be required, and probably are in California, to notify everybody. You got to pay for the postage of that. You have to let people, you now have to pay for like a year credit per person, which could cost thousands of dollars per person. And whether this is not people that were affected, this is not the people that could be affected. It's the people that were in that data lost. So if somebody steals a database with 100 million people in it, you've got to notify those 100 million people, and you might have to pay $1,000 a year for those 100 million people. Do the math. So it's a real problem. And of course, the healthcare diagnosis, weak security, right? Between 2000 and 2001, the number of healthcare breaches spiked 55%. Healthcare is usually pretty good at this, but unfortunately, because more C-suite executives and more board members don't want to spend the money on what's something they don't see as return on investment, cybersecurity gets tossed to the side, and they think they're fine for those 2 years or the 1.5, but it only takes one email from one unknown employee to ruin that entire thing. And you probably get 10,000 emails sent to you. You might not get, even if you're a company of 50, you probably get 10,000 emails. They might not all get through, but that's the point I wanted to show there. So, and then this one I wanted to point out, it might be seen as funny, but we can't believe people are using browsers to manage the passwords. It says make your password management tools. Of course they are, right? So what I mean by that, you just save it in Firefox or Chrome, and that autofills. You need it again. Oh, the horror. Yeah, so that's not encrypted. You could just click on your settings in your browser. Anyone could. If you left your machine unlocked, they can go to your browser. They can click on the settings, go see what the passwords are for whatever sites are. You should be using a password management tool. We use Avira, AVIRA password management tool. It's terrific. I'm not sponsored by them. I don't have an affiliation with them, but I don't even pay for them because we just don't need that yet. But anyways, it's better to have it than not have it. You can assign. IT Glue has one built in as well, but you can assign groups, right? Like a systems admin group, they don't need to know what the SSH credentials are for the networking team, and vice versa. The networking team doesn't need to know what the root password is to get to the hypervisor or to get to anything really. So that password separation segregation, it makes life easier. It does come with a little bit of complication at first because you have to define groups and determine, who those hybrid people are, but realistically put the right people in charge of it after it's already been configured, which most of these companies will deploy for you at a project cost, and then go on from there. So this one I just wanted to point out, security flaw, this pwned Piper PTS security flaw threatens 80% of hospitals in the US. Cybersecurity researchers on Monday disclosed that a set of 9 vulnerabilities known as pwned Piper that left a widely used pneumatic tube system vulnerable to critical attacks, including a possibility of complete takeover. Pneumatic tubes, who's using that? The vulnerabilities, yada yada yada. Yeah, so these vulnerabilities can enable an unauthenticated attacker to take over translocted PTS stations and essentially gain complete control over the pneumatic network of a targeted hospital. This type of control would enable sophisticated and worrisome ransomware attacks, as well as allow attackers to leak sensitive hospital information. Again, not many hospitals are HIPAA compliant. The ones that are, you should definitely do business with. You should definitely ask to see if they're HIPAA certified. And I think that's every 2 or 3 years. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've had to worry about it. But absolutely, this is important stuff. It's coming. Here's all the flaws that were discovered in its CVE. There's an underflow. There's an overflow in these are programming languages or DLLs or some way to get a buffer underrun or a buffer overflow to get access to the system, right? So if you can freak it out, you can inject your own code into that memory instead, and then the next time an application runs or the next process runs, you can inject your way into a network. User script can be run by root. That's a big one. GUI socket denial service. GUI is graphical user interface for those who might not know. So these are the ones that were listed. In a nutshell, the flaws which concern privilege escalation, memory corruption, and denial of service could be abused to gain root access, achieve remote code execution, or denial of service, and worse, permit an attacker to maintain persistence on compromised PTS stations via an insecure firmware upgrade procedure, leading to unauthenticated remote code execution. It's also worth noting that patch yada 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 is expected to be shipped at a future date. Right. So I just wanted to point out that if cybersecurity is always going to be around. You're never going to get 100%. It's also going to change for whatever sector you're in. So if you're a hospital, yours are going to be different than if you're a finance firm, which is going to be different than if you're a transportation company or a bank or whatever, right? So the threats move all the time. Put the right tools in place that do all the heavy lifting for you so you don't have to worry about every single little thing. Some of those with firmware and some Cisco products can get extremely expensive. Hundreds of millions, tens of millions, single millions, depending on what the scope is. And realistically, put the effort into it. They're not, like on an IBM mainframe, you're not getting into the mainframe without being physically at the console. However, if you have that workstation that has access to that mainframe that's on a Windows machine or a Mac OS X machine or whatever, they don't need to get there. They could just get to that one machine. Even then, you could put security places in where they have to request privileges even if the end user uses it. So there are plenty of solutions in place. You just have to spend the time and the money on it. And this last article, before I wrap up here, 53 minutes, is the life cycle of a breached database, right? So it's not just breach it, patch it, you're done, right? So this is from July 29th. Every time there's another data breach, we are asked to change our password as the breached entity. But the reality is that in most cases, by the time the victim organization discloses an incident publicly, which I've discussed in my previous video, the information has already been harvested many times over by profit-seeking criminals. Again, if a database is out there, you can go to Have I Been Owned, or pwned, I guess, .com or .org, I don't remember which one it is. They'll see if you put in your email address, if your information's out there, right? And if you use that same password, if on somebody linked password at your work, guess what? They can easily get into your network if you're still using that same password. Again, use a password management tool. We use Avira. IT Glue has one as well. I recommend IT Glue as an overall product. It just makes organization and process control so much easier. I should say process follow through so much easier. Process management, process control, or there's dedicated platforms for them. If you have the right managers in place, though, you can get away without those. So here's a closer look. Let's go back to the article. Here is a closer look at what typically transpires in the weeks or months before an organization notifies its users about the breached database. Our continued reliance on passwords for authentication has contributed to one toxic data spill or hack after another. Correct. One might even say passwords are the fossil of IT modernization. They are. They are ubiquitous because they are cheap and easy to use, but that means that there also comes with significant trade-offs, such as polluting the internet with weaponized data when they're leaked or stolen in mass. When a website's user database gets compromised, that information invariably turns up on a hacker forum. There, denizens with computer rigs that are built primarily for mining virtual currencies can set to work using the systems to crack passwords. Yes, so if you've ever put in a password, you might see that if you're in a password tool, it'll tell you how long it'll take, right? So I don't know if my password manager is enabled in this mode. Oh, that's my ad blocker. No, it's not. But in my password manager, you can generate a password, and based on the amount of characters and the type of characters that are in it, it will automatically tell you how long it'll take. 31 years, right? It'll take 31 years for 15 digits or 16 digits or whatever. Well, these rigs that are used for mining, they're very good at crunching through hashes and cryptography very fast. So what might take 31 years might take 1 year, right? So, but the point being is you might get one that says 5 seconds. It takes 10 seconds to crack the password, 5 minutes to crack the password. Well, your passwords are out there already, right? So if I grab a database and I need to get through that, I can get access to somebody's pretty easily because I have the power to hash through the algorithms fast. So that was what this article was pointing out at. How successful is password cracking depends a great deal on the length on one's password and the type. I probably should have highlighted it. And the type of password hashing algorithm the victim website uses to obfuscate user passwords. But a decent crypto mining rig can quickly crack a majority of password hashes generated by MD5, which is used everywhere, but it is one of the weaker ones, hashing algorithms. You can hand that over to a person who is used to mine Ethereum or Bitcoin, and if you have a large enough dictionary, which is the passwords that it runs it against, right? And it's so if I make a dictionary for cracking passwords, I'm gonna do 1 to 10 digits. I'll start with A, and then I'll do B, C. I'll go through it, and then for 2 characters, I'll do AB, and then I'll do AC, and then I'll do AE, all AF, all the way through the entire thing. I'll do that for all 10 of them. It can be done in a program. I can write that program in an hour. It's not hard to do. And then I'll try all those passwords in a day or two, right? So it's going to say that right over here, right? So if they have a large enough dictionary of pre-compiled hashes, then you can essentially break 60 to 70% of the hash passwords in a day or two, right? So if I get your database, or credentials to your database, and I can get in there, well, essentially this is the database itself. So this one's kind of, you're not going to get a database because it's too large to share, right? But you might get a public access to that database. So this article kind of skirted around some of the issues there. You wouldn't necessarily have raw access to the database, but what they're saying is if I had a strong enough computer, I could essentially, if I had unlimited access to the database, get in within 1 to 2 days if you had a considered strong password using MD5, but it's still not a strong password. From there, the list of email addresses and corresponding cracked passwords will be run through various automated tools that can check how many email addresses and password pairs in a given leaked data set also work at other popular websites. Right. So if I got into your website, could I get into anybody else's with those same credentials? Could I get into your bank, as an example? That's why multi-factor authentication is a requirement for most banking. If your bank doesn't require multi-factor authentication, which is usually SMS, could be a fingerprint these days. I don't know why you're banking with them. Anyways, the sifting of databases for low-hanging fruit and password reuse most often yields less than 1% success rate and usually far less than 1%, right? Still possible though. You can still get in. But even a hit rate below 1% can be profitable haul for fraudsters, particularly when they're password testing databases with millions of users. From there, the credentials are eventually used for fraud and resold in bulk to legally murky online services that index and resells access to a data breach, to resell access to breach data, right? So if I get into somebody's database, I'm not just going to try to steal their data. I'm going to say, these are how I got in. If anybody else wants them, pay up and I'll give you the access myself, right? But I'm not responsible if they close it. But how would you know if John in, let's just say John in sales is actually John in sales connecting to the database? Do you have the tools in place, right? Do you have multi-factor authentication in place? So he at least has to prove it. And I don't mean to prove it via email. If your two-factor authentication is, we'll send you a code via email, that's also pretty hackable as well. It's better than nothing by all means, but you should change that to something like an SMS tool, also hackable. Or a key fob is probably your safest method. But again, you have to worry about the usability. There is, depending on what your sector is and how much risk you have, you'll have to make, the right multi-factor authentications for your environment. We could help with that as well if you wanted to reach out to us. Again, c14g.com. Targeted phishing, right? So this is still one of the easiest ways to get, you'd be surprised how many phishing attempts are sent, and still to this day, how many people, even everyone knows, that's not real, or this isn't real, they still click on it, right? So going back to the article, so hopefully by this point, it should be clear why reusing passwords is generally a bad idea, though everyone does it. But the more insidious threats with hacked databases come not from the password you use, but from a targeted phishing activity in the early days of a breach. When relatively few ne'er-do-wells have got their hands on hot new hacked databases. That was horribly read, I apologize. Earlier this month, customers at a soccer, this is for the UK, but earlier this month, customers of a soccer jersey retailer, classicfootballshirts.co.uk, started receiving emails with a cashback offer. This is the customers that are receiving it, right? So they've already bought something through it. The message addressed customers by name and referenced past order numbers and payment amounts tied to each account. Sounds pretty legit, right? The emails encouraged recipients to click on a link to accept the cashback offer, and the link went to a lookalike domain that requested bank information, right? So if going back to my link, if I had one that was called mycompany.com, but instead I put a 0 instead of the O for company.com, and you hover over and you're like, yeah, looks fine, and I click it, do you have a tool in place that stops bad DNS? I hope so. If not, reach out to us. We can. So here's what it looked like. Looked legitimate. Needless to say, it wasn't. It soon became clear the customer data relating to historic orders has been compromised. Conduct this attack. Right. So somebody was already in their network. Somebody was able to see their network, get into their network, and send out these phishing attacks. Right. So who's culpable for that? Who's the one they didn't even know? Right. This football code, classicfootballshirts.co.uk. Somebody was in their database, stole a bunch of order information, and then sent a phishing attack for them to click on a link. So now that's two things that this one bad security has done. If you have a public-facing internet, can you run a SQL query on your username or your password? If so, you're vulnerable to SQL injection, right? So try it. Go ask a SQL database person to sign in, not from their machine, but from a different machine, and see if they can run select star from star or whatever the case may be in the username field. And if it allows it, or if it gives a specific error message saying that the SQL query isn't legitimate, that you can lead that can all lead to SQL injection, right? So it's kind of a pain. So obviously these are the things you should do to prevent. These are kind of does, but avoid clicking on links and attachments and emails, right? So attachments and emails are probably becoming a little bit more common now because you can get a virus that ends in docx, or you open, which is the Microsoft Word file, or just doc, and you'll click on the link and it'll ask you, hey, we have to enable some macros. Can we go ahead and enable these macros? Go ahead and click yes, and it's too late. The macro that you downloaded was a security threat, right? But unfortunately, because so many accounting spreadsheets do rely on macros, that's the problem, right? So you can put your antivirus should have a solution to block those type of macros. If not, I would look into getting a better solution for you. Urgency should be a giant red flag, right? Most phishing scams invoke a temporal element that warns of a negative consequence should you fail to respond or act quickly, right? So they're trying to fear you into just take a risk, right? Take a deep breath. If you're unsure whether the message is legitimate, visit the site or services in question manually, right? So don't type in the address, or I'm sorry, don't click on the address, type it in, right? So, and then try to, if the site doesn't exist or if the link is different, don't use it. Just the end. And if it's important enough for a company, they'll send it again or they'll call you, right? So, and here, this one's going to be a hard one because usability is so important. Don't reuse passwords. If you're the kind of person who likes to use the same password across multiple sites, then you definitely need to be using a password manager. Again, we use Avira. I don't even know the passwords to half of my stuff. I just click the automatic fill in. It's a randomly generated password. It just fills it in. I'm done with it, right? And it's all over an encrypted channel. And I don't know why they brought this up, but phone-based phishing uses hacker databases too. A great many scams are perpetrated over the phone, leveraging personal and financial information gleaned from the past data breaches to make them sound more believable. If you think you never fell for someone trying to scam you over the phone, check out this story about a tech-savvy professional got taken thousands of dollars by a fraudster masquerading as his credit union, right? So this happened to somebody I know. I mentioned this last episode as well. He lost $5,000, right? They called him saying they're from his bank. They noticed something was fishy on their account, and if he didn't do anything in the immediate, but before the end of the day, he was going to lose all his money. First of all, that's never going to happen. A bank could obviously stop that, but because he ended up doing what they wanted, he lost all that money. He lost $5,000 because they told him, if you want to save your money, what you need to do is you have to go buy gift cards and then scratch off those gift cards, take a picture, send them to our email address, and we'll put that money back into your account after this is all passed. He lost the money. Visa did not back him up because if you have a card with a chip on it, that's your fault. The liability lands with the card owner in that scenario, so he was just out $5,000, and that could happen to anybody. So I think I'm a little over an hour and 7 minutes. As fast as I talked, I'm sorry I talked so fast. I was trying to jam a lot of content in at once. Maybe these will just have to go longer. Maybe I'll have to not go into so much detail. But either way, I just this week I wanted to show what's been popping up, what we could talk about, and why it could impact you. And my favorite thing was a lot of the times the companies don't want to spend the money that's required. And unfortunately, if you care about your company, you do have to spend money, not just on payroll, but on putting the right tools and the right processes in place to make sure you're not the next victim. Thank you, everybody. Until next time. Bye. And again, we can be reached at c14g.com.